The fork module is found here in the upper right of the edit view. Now we know that sound is triggered by a hammer hitting the fork, and in this section we can model the two components of the fork. Now the fork is basically the shape of a tuning fork with a small branch called the tine, and we have controls for that over here, and a larger branch called the tone bar, and we have controls over here for that part of it. Now the tine is where the hammer hits the fork, and it produces a high metallic sound that we associate with the attack and the clarity of the electric piano sound. Now the amplitude or level of the tine signal in the overall blend of the sound is adjusted with this big tine knob over here. So I'm going to play this example, and I have all the velocities of all the notes set equally. And even though there's no velocity tracking in this section, there is velocity tracking in the other sections. I want to kind of keep this as clinical as possible for this particular example so we can hear the influence of the tine in the overall sound. So I'm going to play this and I'll move the tine knob, and you'll hear as I dial it up more of this in the blend. Now, the level of this tine can be modulated by pitch using the key tracking knob over here. And when we turn this knob left, it'll increase the amount of the tine that we hear in the lower notes, and it'll decrease it for the higher notes. So if I dial this down, we'll hear an example of that. So we're hearing it more in the lower notes versus dialing this the other way, where it'll be the opposite. And that's a little more natural to hear more of the tines in the higher notes and a bit of a darker, warmer sound down low. Maybe I'd put less of it somewhere around there. Now, the timbre of the tine bar can be adjusted with the color knob, and that controls the amplitude of the low and high partials in the frequency spectrum. So when we turn the color knob over here to the left, it'll favor the lower harmonics, and if we turn it up to the right, it'll increase the higher harmonics. So let me move to another example over here, and I've got some different velocities, but we can hear the influence of the color nicely with this example. And what I'll do is leave this around 2 o'clock, and I'll move the color knob, and you'll hear the different quality of sound to the tine. So different tonal qualities to it. Down to the left, I think of it as a kind of wider Q in the lower mids, where it emphasizes that part of the sound. And in the upper area of it, we get more of a focused, precise, kind of brighter sound. But those are the harmonics. Now we have the decay knob over here, and this is used to adjust the time that it takes the tine to fade out when a key is held. So we turn this clockwise to increase the natural decay time. We can get some dramatic amounts, but let me shift to another example here with some sustained chords, and I'll dial this and you'll hear the influence of this one. I'll set this to a little bit more modest amount, somewhere around there, and you'll hear the influence of this. So if you like the sound of the tine, you can get a more natural sound by having it decay a bit quicker, and then you can use a bit more of it to get the nice crisp presence, but without having it overpower the sound. Now the tone knob over here is used to control the amplitude of the signal from the tone bar. So the tone bar is the biggest part of the fork, and it's connected to the tine, and it starts to oscillate when the hammer hits the tine. So as we turn this clockwise, it's going to get louder as we get more sound from the tone bar, and it's got a pretty dramatic effect. I'm going to start by dialing it down, and we'll turn it up, and you'll hear the effect of it. So here we're getting only the tine, or mostly the tine. So it's nice that you can blend the amount of the tone bar and tine so you can get different qualities to the fork component of the sound. Now, we have a decay knob here for the tone bar, and this controls the time for the oscillations of the tone bar to fade out when you're holding a note. So as we turn it clockwise, it's going to increase the decay time. So I'm going to set this around 2 o'clock so we get a nice amount of that. And you'll hear the influence of this as I move it from low to high. So we can get a really unnaturally long decay time or an unnaturally short one, but a little bit in the negative territory is nice for a percussive, funky kind of attack to the sound, which could be good for certain types of percussive parts. Now, after this, we have a release knob, and this pertains to the whole fork module, and it applies to both the tone bar and the tine. And it's used to control the decay time of the whole fork when notes are released and the damper is applied to the fork. So as we turn this knob clockwise, it increases the release time. So let me exaggerate this a bit so we can really hear the effect. And I'll set this to a neutral value. And you'll hear on the note off the release time being affected. Let me go to another example here with more staccato notes. So that pertains to the damper, which we can control separately over here. So that's the fork module in the edit view.